Hi, so this is a review of a few questions from the calculator portion of SAT Prep Test number 5. So I'm going to be going over numbers 21, 23, 25, 26, 27, and 28. So we definitely are at the harder level questions because we're getting farther into the test. So number 21 says, it gives this equation with variables in it, a minus b over a equals c. In the equation above, if a is negative and b is positive, which of the following must be true? And this is a great question to actually come up with some values for a and b and see what happens. So I'm going to let a be what it asks it to be, negative. So I'm just going to let a be -1. And I'm going to let b equal 2. And I'm going to plug them directly into this equation to see what's happening with C, because the answer is asking, like, basically, what do you see happening to C? All right, so if A is negative, that means we get -1 minus 2 all over -1. All right, so that's going to give me -3 all over -1, which is going to give me 3. A positive C value. Now, if you think about that, if A is negative here and it's being subtracted and then divided, I'm always going to end up with this negative over a negative, resulting in a positive C value. So my answer would be A. Okay. A little bit trickier here. Number 23 and 24 was based on this information. Townsend Realty Group investments. They invested in 5 different properties listed in the table above. The table shows the amount in dollars the company paid for each property and the corresponding monthly rental price in dollars the company charges for the property of these locations. So the question number 23 was asking us the relationship between the monthly rental price, R. So I'm going to let R be the monthly rental. I always write it down for myself to make sure I'm clear. And the property's purchase price, P, can be represented by a linear function. Which of the following represents the relationship? Well, first of all, I'm looking for its slope-intercept form, so I need a slope and a starting place. But this is data, and it's not just 2 points. So this is where I'm going to have to use my calculator, and a great tool would be to use linear regression on the calculator and put the data in. Now, the thing about it is you're really supposed to know which one's your X, which one's your Y, but so you should ask what depends on what, but it's clear here that the monthly rental depends on the purchase price because P is X, and we know that Y is our dependent variable. All right, so I took the data, I grabbed my calculator, I want to go to the Stat button, so you're going to press Stat, Edit, and press Enter. Now, L1 becomes your X values, L2 is your Y values. Now, you may notice I put the L1s, the X's, without the thousands of dollars because it's not really going to be, it's not going to matter, those extra zeros. So I did 128, 176. I listed all my X's and all my Y's. Then I'm going to press Stat again on my calculator. I'm going to arrow to Calc, and I'm going to choose number 4, LinReg. Linear regression. Now, each calculator is different. Some make you go through this table. Others just will calculate it directly. And it gives me the A and the B. So my equation is 7.5x minus 10. So, oops, sorry about that. So 7.5 minus 10 would be answer D. Again, not all that difficult a problem, but you really have to recognize you got to use linear regression here. Okay, so moving on to number 25. Definitely a hard question. Number 1, why? Lots of words. So if I'm starting to watch my time here, I might choose to pass this one up and go back. Remember, no matter what, if you pass it, pick an answer and circle it so that you go back to it, okay? All right, but here it says a psychologist set up an experiment to study the tendency of a person with a series of items. In the experiment, 300 people were presented with a set of 5 pictures arranged in random order. Each person was asked to choose the most appealing picture. Of the first 150% participants, 36 chose the first picture to be the most appealing. Among the remaining, P chose the first picture in the set. So I know that the people that chose the first picture were 36 plus P of 300 total people. All right, then it says, if more than 20% of the participants chose the first set, which of the following inequalities best describes the possible values of P? All right, so more than means greater than 20%, so 0.2. Remember, we don't write percents in expressions or inequalities or equations. We use decimals. So I know that this is what the percent would be. 36 plus P over 300 has to be greater than 0.20. So then I simplified it because these were all kind of simplified. So P, 36 plus P, cross multiply because it's like a proportion, 0.20 times 300. And I looked for that answer and it apparently looked like D. But again, this is a harder level question because of all the words wrapped up in it. All right, 26. Again, remember these are getting harder. The surface area of a cube. So surface area is everything in the cube. So if you think about a cube for a second, a cube is a square, but three-dimensional. So it's got 6 sides, all of which are squares. So I knew that this 6 actually didn't matter, that each side had an area of this, a over 4 squared. But I need the perimeter of a face, so I actually first need to find a side of the face. Well, if the area is a over 4 squared, then the side, okay, would have to be the square root of that. So the square root of a over 4 squared, which means that each side length would be a over 4. And it wants the perimeter of that face. So I have to take a over 4 and multiply it by 4. So A would be my answer. It's really helpful for you to remember that S squared is the area of a square. Okay, so in this case, that tells me that the square root of S squared, so S is a side of the square. All right, moving on. Number 27. Challenging problem, but so fun. Love it when it's fun. The mean score of 8 players in a basketball game was 14.5. If the highest score is removed, the mean score of the remaining 7 players becomes 12 points. What was the highest score? It's very helpful for you to remember what mean is. First of all, mean means average. And I always like to think of the average of the sum of things, the sum of the total number you have divided by the total number. And that gives me the average. That idea right there, I love. There's my heart. I love it. So I know that the sum of something, of these 8 players, their average is 14. So I have some of this information. I have the total number of players was 18, and I have the average. What I don't have is the sum. So I decided to let A equal the sum. Okay? So that tells me that the A is equal to, I can cross multiply because again, that's a proportion. A is equal to 14.5. 14.5 times 8. So 116. So I know the sum of their scores of the first 8 players is a 116. Now, I have to think about that. If I remove a player, okay? If I remove a player from the sum, that means I'm going to have 7 players, and I know their average is 12. But I don't know. All I know is that was the highest player. So I'm going to let X equal the score of the highest player. So I did A minus X. And again, so now I had an equation. So A minus X had to equal 7 times 12, which was 84. That gave me the work I needed because we know A to be 116. I plugged in 116 minus X equals 84. So 84 minus 116 gives me negative 32. So negative X equals negative 32 and X equals 32. So my answer would be C. Really great problem. Really shows your understanding of averages and how you find the average and what the top would have to represent in the equation if you used an equation. So really good one to keep looking at. And this last one, I'm going to stop on this one because it's getting kind of long here, guys. Sorry. Number 28. The graph of the linear function f is shown above. The slope of the graph of the linear function g is 4 times the slope of this. All right, well, that means I need to find the slope of g. Well, the slope of this is up 1 over 2, so the slope of f is 1/2, up 1 over 2. So g of x's slope has to be 4 times that. So 4 times 1/2 is 2. So I know the slope of g is 2. It also says that g passes through the point 0, -4. That's the y-intercept. So I have the slope and the y-intercept of the function g. So I decided to write the equation g of x equals 2x minus 4. Now that helps me because it is asking me to find the value of g at 9. Well, it's just saying let 9 be x for my equation. So 2 times 9 minus 4 would give me 18 minus 4, so 14. This is one way of doing it, not the only way. Not the only way. So anyways, hope that helps. Have a great night.